Hello and welcome back to Theatre Beard, the YouTube channel specifically for students of drama, theatre and performance studies or the performing arts, or anybody who's got an interest. I'm so pleased that you could join me once again for another Wordy Wednesday, and this time it's part 2 of our musical theatre words, and it's all words to do with the music and songs in musical theatre. But before we begin, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on any future videos. If you haven't seen part 1, you can find it in the Wordy Wednesday playlist, as well as all the other videos there. So let's get started with some musical theatre terminology. First up, we're going to look at the names for different types of musicals. We're going to begin with book musicals. Now, a book musical is when the songs and dances are fully integrated into the narrative and they actually further the plot, and there are very defined dramatic goals for these three-dimensional characters. Book musicals are usually made up of 3 parts: the script, the music, and the lyrics. And it's usually the script that comes first, and then the music and lyrics are added to help to develop the characters and to further the plot. Shows such as West Side Story, Fiddler on the Roof, and My Fair Lady are all categorised as book musicals. Next up, we have jukebox musicals, and a jukebox musical uses pre-existing songs and then builds a story around them. Sometimes the songs that are chosen are all by the same artist or group. Other times they're a variety of different songs that are all put in the same show. Also, the songs can be performed in their original state, but sometimes they can also be changed to better fit the story. So the lyrics might be slightly different, or they might be performed in a different style. For example, the musicals Moulin Rouge and Juliet all use a variety of songs from a whole load of different artists, but they're all in the same show. Other jukebox musicals that I'm sure you're aware of are ones such as We Will Rock You, featuring the music of Queen, and Mamma Mia, which features the music of ABBA. And in the cases of these shows, they've used the music of those artists and worked them into a completely original story. Other times they will use the music of a particular artist to tell that artist's story, and the jukebox musical almost becomes a bit like a documentary. So for example, in the musical Jersey Boys, they're using the music of Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons to tell the story of Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. Much like in Tina, the Tina Turner musical, they're using her songs to tell her story. Now we're going to look at a revue, and a musical revue is a musical theatre show that features singing, dancing, music and sketches. Usually a musical revue will revolve around a particular theme or a particular composer. There might be a storyline, but it's usually pretty thin and rather weak. This is because the storyline is actually secondary to the individual pieces and the individual performances. Musical revues are very popular with university drama societies because it allows individual artists to display their individual talents. Some famous revues that you might like to look up are Side by Side, which showcases the work of Stephen Sondheim, and Tomfoolery, which showcases the music of Tom Lehrer. Next up is the concept musical, and a concept musical is where a theme or metaphor or a concept is just as important to the show as the narrative is. The concept musical became particularly popular in the 1960s, where directors wanted to experiment a little bit more and started to throw away traditional theatrical structures. Directors, playwrights and composers would use a concept musical to usually make some kind of social commentary, and because of this they didn't necessarily have huge commercial success, meaning the shows usually weren't very popular and they didn't make a lot of money. Some concept musicals include Assassins, which is all about assassination attempts on different American presidents, Avenue Q, which is performed with puppets, and the 24th annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, which is set at a spelling bee, but all of the children taking part are performed by adults and it involves an awful lot of audience participation. There's also such a thing as a rock musical or a rock opera, and some of these are jukebox musicals. So for example, American Idiot by Green Day is a jukebox musical but also a rock musical. Another famous rock musical is Spring Awakening, and it tells the story of an 18th century play but includes rock songs, which hopefully makes it a bit more relevant to a contemporary audience. And finally in this section we have Song Cycle, which is a collection of songs that are written usually by the same composer, and they're all designed to be performed in a particular order across a whole evening. However, they may feature a whole host of unconnected characters that you only see for one song and then you never see them again, and there isn't really a storyline that connects them all together. But there may be a thematic link. There's another type of musical that I'm going to talk about, but it's not to do with how it's written, it's more to do with how it's performed, and that is the actor-musician musical. Actor-musician is sometimes shortened to actor-muso, and in actor-muso musicals, the performers on stage, the actors, are also the musicians playing the music. Sometimes the piece might have been written specifically with actor-musicians in mind, such as the musical Once, or it could be that a director has decided to direct a production as an actor-muso production. Some other terms we're going to be looking at now are all to do with the different types of songs or numbers in a particular show. And the first word we're going to look at is number, and it basically just means a song or a dance routine or a combination of those two. So for example, if someone was to say, let's go from the top of the number, they mean going from the start of that particular song or that particular dance routine. Another term you might want to listen out for, or you might want to use it when you're analysing musical theatre performances, is the term underscoring, and this is when there is music playing underneath dialogue. The underscoring is there to complement the scene. It might be in agreement with the emotion that's happening in the scene, or the music might be there to express the subtext. So it might be a particularly happy scene on stage, but the underscoring might be a bit sinister to give us an impression that something is not quite right. Next up is the term recitative, which is a word that is quite tricky to say. Now, recitative usually appears in musicals that are sung all the way through. So in a show where there might usually be dialogue, they're singing instead. But rather than having to write a whole beautiful melody for a basic conversation, they'll use recitative music instead. I'm fairly certain you're probably very familiar with the musical Les Miserables, and there's an awful lot of recitative in that show. And I'm just about to give you my very best lovely lady.
What pretty hair, what pretty locks you've got there. What luck you've got, it's worth a centime, my dear.
Sorry about that. But as you can tell, it's just a conversation where she's trying to buy Fantine's hair. So rather than writing a whole song about it, they used recitative music instead. Next up is the patter song, and a patter song is usually characterised by a very fast tempo with lots of syllables in it. Very often when they're performed, they sound a bit like a tongue twister. Patter songs are usually, but not always, comedic, and I'm going to post some examples in the description box. There's Stephen Sondheim's Not Getting Married from Company, there's Both Reach for the Gun from Chicago by Kander and Ebb, and there's also Lionel Bart's Reviewing the Situation from Oliver. Almost forgot it. And finally, in the previous video, I talked about all the music that you'll hear at the end of the show, including the bows music and the exit music. But there was one that I forgot to mention, so I'm going to put it in this video now. It is, of course, the encore. So when the crowd have really enjoyed the show and they've gone absolutely wild, they might shout out, "Encore! Encore!" I'm not shouting because I've got neighbours. And it comes from the French for again. And so that concludes today's Wordy Wednesday. Thank you so much again for joining me. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Also, check out the video all about the interview with the pantomime dame and panto director, Sam Rayburn, that I've got coming up, because I'm going to be interviewing him this week. And then I'm going to publish that video on March 1st. So you can ask any question you might like about getting into theatre, his particular career, or about panto in general. So pop your questions in the comments box below. So thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you next time.